This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn. Ow!
Hey friend, how are you?
I'm good. Happy Veterans Day. First and foremost, Thank you to our veterans. We appreciate your service. And I, as a government employee, appreciate the day off. So, with that, what are we going to be talking about today?
Oh, today we're going to talk about your brain on a crush.
Ooh.
And I love that we thought this up because it was kind of just one of those... like, hey, Jen, what do you know about crushes? Like, what do you think about crushes? And then we just kind of went back and forth and talked about kind of our horrific experiences.
Or good experiences. It came about very organically, as many of our topics do. And, the thing is, I think everybody can relate to this because we've all had a crush and probably more than one. And I think a lot of us can relate to the very distinct feelings that one feels when they're around their crush, right? Butterflies, anxiety, like, oh my God, he touched my hand while working on our science project, 11th grade fucking chemistry or whatever. They're a normal part of adolescent development and even adulthood. So, crushes can be incredibly healthy. We encourage them, but sometimes shit gets dark. So what happens when a crush becomes an obsession? We're going to talk about that too. So we're going to talk to you about, your emotions, your physiology, what's healthy, what's unhealthy. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about today.
I love it. This was a very healing episode for me too.
Good.
I think I had I thought I was more creepy than I was. Yeah. And in doing this together, I realized you did a lot of those same things. Yeah. We know other women, I'm sure other men have done the same things. And
either we're both creepy and a bad litmus test for what's quote unquote normal, or a lot of this stuff is completely natural, normal, and a lot of folks do it. So
I think our listeners will feel heard though.
Yeah, probably. So on that note, why don't you tell us about your crushes so people can immediately start judging you?
Yes, 100%. Well, I remember having, I don't ever remember not having a crush.
Okay.
I was always, I don't want to say boy crazy, but very, very in touch with wanting to, just to have a boyfriend, and that whole world felt very exciting to me. I couldn't wait to be a teenager. But my first crush was on a boy in nursery school, specifically because he had the same initials as me.
Yeah.
And we both were born in the month of July, which is like total sign of we have so much in common, right?
Yes.
And I was 5, and I made him marry me in the playground, but unbeknownst to me, he had to go home sick that day. So I did this whole dramatic thing that I got left at the altar, and I was abandoned.
What happened to in sickness and in health?
I don't know. I
marriage was doomed from the beginning, man.
I was mad. We watched a lot of Dynasty when I was young. Maybe that was why.
Did you slap him?
No, but I did get all the girls in the playground to follow me and say how much we hated him.
Wow.
So, but again, didn't get much better. I remember my very first detention was because I made 3 other girls. I was really good at bringing a lot of girls into this stuff.
Yeah.
What would you call me, the alpha?
they felt your anger.
I made 3 other girls chase this boy around the playground in 2nd grade, and I tackled him to the floor and wanted to kiss him. And then he actually punched me in the face.
Wow.
But then I tattled because I was like, oh, I got hurt. And the teacher was like, well, why did you do that? And I said what happened. And she's like, that's really fucked up, Carol. But I always had crushes on celebrities.
Yeah.
Remember Will Wheaton?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Star Trek Next Generation.
Totally. He was
also
hot.
where I first met Whoopi Goldberg. And I made my mom buy me Bop magazine.
I remember
because
Bop.
I just always loved them. But I'll talk about my obsessive crushes a little later on. But it got pretty weird, Jen.
I'm looking forward to weirdness. We live for weirdness on this show. So for me, I remember being in love with this kid in 5th grade whose name was John Daly. I feel like that's such a common name that I'm not
Like the boulevard.
Like the boulevard, or like the golfer, who is a very colorful man, to say the least. This is what happens when your husband
I was going to say, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah. I can tell you all the famous golfers' names.
Cool.
But I'm going to save that for another episode, or not. This dude, John Daly, was not into me at all. We both had really big vocabularies. And so, our teacher really nourished that. Great teacher, by the way. Shout out to Mr. B, who was like the first one to think I wasn't a weirdo and, support me and love me and all that good stuff. But so I remember being obsessed with John Daly. And then probably around the same time, I was really obsessed with Jim Carrey. It was around the time that Ace Ventura came out. And I watched In Living Color.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up with Jim Carrey. I think he's wonderful. And I wore a locket with his picture on it.
No
I
way.
have a framed picture of him by my bed.
I love that you framed it and lock it. I just had the magazine, the free fold outs that you get, and I tape those to the wall. You went really deep.
You know me. I go balls to the wall when it comes to decor. Everything's got to look fancy and Victorian. And so I don't feel like anybody necessarily had a crush on me until I was a little bit older. I distinctly remember when I was 19, there was a guy who was a little on the strange side who worked at a restaurant that I would frequent a lot that was close to my office at the time. He brought me a Christmas gift to my office, and when I opened it, it was a corset from Victoria's Secret.
So suggestive.
It is suggestive, and it was beautiful. I kept it. I probably should have been like, this is inappropriate, because I had no interest in dating the guy.
This is inappropriate, but I'm going to keep it because it's dope.
I'm 19. I don't know any better. So, yeah, that's what I did. So, as we said before, crushes are totally normal. We've all had them. But I actually didn't know this. According to WikiHow, there are different kinds of crushes.
I didn't know this either.
I had no idea. So, let's start with the definition of what a crush is. So, let's refer to Urban Dictionary.
That's where I go for all my things I need to know.
Well, I'm also feeling old and not hip. So when I hear youngsters say something, I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? So I immediately go to Urban Dictionary. So thank you for helping me navigate the brave new world that I'm no longer a part of. So Urban Dictionary defines a crush as a burning desire to be with someone who you find attractive and extremely special. Crushes make you feel crazy emotions, like feeling shy and uncontrollably giddy at the same time. Can't always choose who you have a crush on, but you can choose how you react once you figure out that you have a crush on someone. I think that's pretty accurate.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to the different kinds of crushes. So there's a friendly platonic crush, sometimes called a squish. a tight squeeze.
Because you're not crushing on them, you're just squishing them. It's small.
A lovely embrace.
I love it.
It's important to remember that not all strong feelings are romantic.
That's true.
Some can be platonic, thus a squish, and it can be very special. So the admiration crush is another type of crush. When you idolize a person, like a celebrity, teacher, or classmate, who's done something really cool. That is an admiration crush. And these can be really intense feelings too, and sometimes it's hard to parse out whether or not they're romantic feelings or just admiration.
I'd say this is where most people fall in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would say most healthy relationships are predicated on respect.
Yeah.
First and foremost, and so that makes sense. And I think an admiration crush can probably be a basis for a romantic crush. Mm-hmm. So then there's also the passing crush. It's human nature to be attracted to other people. Yes, it is. Even if you're in a great relationship, you still might find that you feel attracted to someone other than your romantic partner.
And that's perfectly normal
Totally
and
normal.
healthy if you act on that behavior and it's not within the construct of your relationship.
That's right.
That's when it's problematic. But
yes.
I hear people all the time get so upset with themselves and they're like, but I love my partner. But it's like, well, something about that person is intriguing to you.
Yeah, just
you can explore that without hating on it, acting on it.
Yeah, somebody could be really good looking and funny and you enjoy being around that person. It doesn't mean you're going to jump into bed with them and abandon your partner.
No. Unless that's okay with your partner. Yeah. That might be. There's some partnerships where what is it called? The
polygamous or polyamorous.
Very different.
Open relationships
or the pass, the free pass.
Oh yeah, that hall pass.
Hall pass. Thank you.
I don't know if I have a hall pass, although I think probably Ian Somerhalder, who's also happily married, it seems, from the Vampire Diaries and various other things, is absolutely my hall pass. Although I don't think I could act on it if given the chance.
You think
if Ian Somerhalder was standing in front of me naked and was like, let's bum down, I think I'd be like, I can't do it.
I'm going to hurt my partner.
Yeah, even though I have this past, like, I don't think I could act on it.
I think it's kind of cool that I do have a lot of respect for the polyamory community because this is often what they're allowing themselves to explore and then deal with the feelings that do come up that you often don't have the permission to in monogamous relationships.
Yes. Well, more power to them because I don't have the time, energy, or the fucking money and resources
I
to have
can
more than
barely
just
woo one
partner.
person and keep him.
Dude, yeah, I'm with you on that.
So, I don't need more than one angry man in my life.
No.
They're not angry.
No, they're not angry. They're just men. So there's also the romantic crush, which I think is the one that we are all the most familiar with. Having a crush on somebody really does mean you really, really like them and in a romantic way. So a romantic crush means that you want to be with that person in more than just a friendly way. You want to be their romantic partner. You think about kissing them.
You want to touch parts.
You want to touch parts, yeah. You want to be my partner. I don't know what that means. But yeah, holding hands, kissing, cuddling, maybe something more intense. That means you have a romantic crush, y'all.
Cool.
So I thought this was really funny because apparently there's a template letter for everything, not just resumes and cover letters, but apparently there's a letter you can use to tell your crush you are into them. And Carolyn, I'm going to have you read this.
I'm going to read this in my most fifth grade self because I will tell you about a person who I actually did this to.
Good. Do it.
Dear insert person's name. I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to express something that's been on my mind for a while now. I have developed feelings for you, and I wanted to let you know I have a crush on you. I know this may come as a surprise, and I understand if you don't feel the same way, but I couldn't keep my feelings to myself any longer, and I wanted to take a chance to tell you how I feel. You're an amazing person, and I'm drawn to you in a way that I can't explain. Your kindness, intelligence, and sense of humor are just a few of the things that I find incredibly attractive about you. I feel like we have a connection that I haven't felt with anyone else, and I would love the opportunity to explore that with you further. I know that expressing feelings can be difficult, but I just wanted to be honest with you about how I feel. I understand if you need to take some time to think about this, and I respect your decision, whatever it may be. I don't think that's true. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter. I hope we can continue our friendship regardless of your response, but if you feel the same way, I would love to see where this could go. Feelings about this. What's your first reaction?
Well, my first reaction is I think people are already doing a version of this because people love to communicate via text these days.
Yeah.
Even things that I think should be a face-to-face conversation. Maybe it's because I'm in my 40s and I'm old school. But I think a distilled down version of this probably comes out in text a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, this is one of those things where I'm like, this is an in-person conversation or maybe less of a conversation, less explicit disclosure, and more like, let's see organically where things go.
Well, I agree with you. I would much rather have this, again, because we're in our 40s. I would be thrilled if someone said this to me I've never had someone say this to me.
Yeah. Not like this.
Not like this.
No.
But, there's something about sort of that chemical game and that sort of the eyes and the way that you kind of can, through social connection, sort of,
right,
when someone's into you,
yes,
or there's when it's been a relationship that's been more than a crush, or it's not one-sided. Yeah. My worry about this is you're really putting yourself out there. You're being really vulnerable in writing. One, I worry about the person on the receiving end, because now is there a template for what to say back?
Yeah, where's the response template? You need two, right? One I'm into you, one I'm not into you.
Yes, it 100%. I mean, I think if this is beautiful, it's honest, it's thoughtful. If someone said this to me, I would be
I like the honesty of it.
I do. I mean, again, would it be okay to this person for me to go, you know what? I think you're a wonderful friend. Mm-hmm. I do have, you're a nice person, but I don't feel attracted to you. I'm so sorry. Yeah. But I really appreciate this. I don't know that at certain ages, I would think people can do this and at certain maturity levels.
But you were out there in the dating world. You've seen how terrible and immature and evasive people can be.
Here's the truth, friend.
Yeah.
I wrote shit like this to people. Yeah. I started writing shit like this in 4th grade.
That makes sense.
There was a boy called Stevie B, and I had I think I had a pretty obsessive crush on him for a 5th grader, but again, very normal. I was in 4th grade, he was in 8th, and I made the boy who carpooled with him give him love notes from me that were, I wrote from like this Shakespeare book that I found in our house.
That's cute!
And I put like,
you're like Mr. Big, just sending like love poems. I will get you.
And I take Bath and Body Works and spray it on fake flowers.
That's awesome.
And give it to this 8th grader.
Normal.
And it's not, again, as I thought about this, I went, okay, I'm sure other people did this, but I don't.
It's normal.
It was.
You know about the letters I found.
Embarrassing.
Of course, in retrospect, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I'm cleaning out my, my mother-in-law's house recently, where nothing was ever thrown away. My husband discovered this treasure trove of letters that his 7th grade girlfriend wrote to him that were very intense in nature.
They were similar to this, a little more explicit.
More explicit.
But I don't know if she understood a lot of the
I don't
words
think
she was
did.
about.
When she said, I dream about making love to you, I don't know if she necessarily knew what that meant. Not everybody was as advanced as I was in my understanding of all things sexual. Not that I did anything. Right, exactly. But I read a lot.
Yeah.
Little Danielle Steele. But yeah, so in finding that, and granted that's just one example, it really kind of solidifies my belief that expressions like that from young people, totally normal.
Well, and that's the thing. I got this idea. I watched a lot of movies. I watched a lot of shows. I read a lot of romance novels, even as a kid.
Yeah. How did you get your hands on that shit?
My mom had all that stuff. And, I don't know. It was all around us. Like, we grew up watching Porky's and fucking Revenge of the Nerds.
Holy shit. How problematic is that stuff?
100%. But I had this very, very sweet adolescence of, well, if you tell someone how you feel and you're attracted to them, then you crush on each other. And then it was part of the drama, too.
Yeah.
Like, it created a lot of drama at school of like, oh, Carolyn, here comes Steve. Oops, I almost said Stevie B.
Yeah.
And everyone would be like, oh, or like he'd come like give the hall passes out or something.
It was Steve Buscemi, huh?
Yeah, it was, totally.
Surprisingly, I'm way into Steve Buscemi.
I'm so disturbed by how into him I am.
I know. I'm like, oh, that character you played in Billy Madison with People to Kill List and your red lipstick, I'm into it.
Steve Buscemi in The Sopranos.
Oh, he's so good.
He plays such a great role in that. I just love him. And then when I found out he was like actually a firefighter.
I know. He's a badass motherfucker.
I know. And like brought his stuff out for 9/11. I'm like, God, you're making it worse.
Okay, we're really going to an interesting path here.
I love Steve Buscemi. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of sweet, but also, no one said anything to me.
Yeah.
No one engaged with me about like, hey, if he doesn't like you back, because I would feel sad.
And we're going to talk about that later too, in terms of how parents can kind of guide their kids around processing these feelings. Mm-hmm. So Carolyn, for the sake of this episode, we're going to focus exclusively on romantic crushes. So tell us about what's happening in our brains and bodies when we're in the throes of crushing.
Well, I love understanding what's actually physiologically and chemically happening in my brain and how that's affecting my body, because it helps make sense of like that feeling we all talk about, like the butterflies in our stomach. That's an actual thing. And I feel nervous, or I feel my palms sweat when I see my crush. So all of this comes from a 2022 article called Love Actually. I love that movie.
I'll give it another chance.
I'm going to tie you down like that kid I tried to kiss and make you watch it.
I've only seen it once. It's cheesy. I'm not a huge rom-com person.
I get that. Yeah. I'll trade you. Well, I'll watch a horror film and then we'll watch Love Actually. All right.
Deal.
But, I always say before you can understand the neuroscience behind a crush in general, you need to define the different ways that our body can respond and feel connected to another person. And that's not heteronormative. That you can feel that way about anyone. It doesn't matter. Love is a spectrum, and as always, it begins with lust, then progresses to more physiological attraction, and typically ends in a stage called attachment.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a very brief, we could do a whole episode on this.
I'm sure we could.
But I'll give you a very brief one. So lust is a strong physical desire for someone. It actually doesn't come from the brain at all.
Interesting.
It comes from the ovaries and the testes. So that's our sexual organs.
Yeah.
And when we experience lust, we are primarily releasing sex hormones.
Okay.
So it makes sense, as you and I are sharing some of our stories, a lot of this happened early on.
Yeah.
And you do go through a wave of estrogen and testosterone, even at 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You do go through this for sure around 4th, 5th, 6th to 8th grade. And we know now that kids are going through puberty around 8 or 9. So it makes sense that even her saying, like, I want to make love to you. Yeah. Like, not knowing, I'm certainly said in some of my notes, I think even in my diary, I circle, like, I'm going to have sex with Stevie.
Yeah. It's like, estrogen motivated. And I imagine that's confusing for kids because most kids at that age, maybe it's different these days with all the exposure we have. Yeah. They don't know about sex and hormones or any of that stuff. Plus, with the way a lot of parents interact or don't interact with their kids around this stuff and tell them what's going on so they have a basis of understanding, it's even more confusing.
Absolutely.
We'll pick that up later.
Absolutely. I know. No, it's fascinating, though. Actually, I forgot that. So, again, first you experience tingling in your loins or wherever you experience it tingling.
You better run, son.
So next stage after lust is attraction. This is when you have an interest in someone and find that person pleasurable. Okay. And, again, this is where we get into the admiration crush or even the romantic crush. Yeah. Your brain reward pathways get involved here. Okay. So there's a big neurotransmitter we talk about a lot. It's called dopamine. It's released, and dopamine has a cascade effect on other neurotransmitters. So I'm going to give you a really Cliff Notes version of dopamine again. I like it. So dopamine is produced in the substantia nigra, which is part of the midbrain. So we're talking real inner brain here, right? Real reptile shit. Okay. And it's one of the reasons that we feel that immense pleasure when we are even just thinking about the crush. Yeah. You're actually having a dopamine release in your body. Yeah. And even though it could be something we know nothing about. And that's actually what's kind of sweet about it. So, again, next that dopamine, follow that dopamine train. Yeah. And it doesn't happen linearly, but the way I'm describing it, it is. The nucleus accumbens is what motivates us to continue having a feeling. Okay. So obviously, dopamine gets released. It feels good. And when I think about this person, I feel good. Yeah. So that's a motivation. It's
like natural cocaine.
It is like natural cocaine. And it's free. I just have to stare at men to feel it. But this also is the reason why we sometimes feel stress and nerves around that person. See. And even a panicky feeling, like an anxious feeling. Yeah. When our crush actually talks to us, you're going to feel an increase in body temperature, a decrease in appetite, or maybe an increase in appetite, an increase in heart rate. And this is all explained by the dopamine effect on the hypothalamus, and that controls body function. So when you're feeling all that, it's science. It's happening. Good. A couple more neurotransmitters that kind of also play a role when we fall for someone or when we have a crush. They are stress hormones. So cortisol is a big stress hormone. Norepinephrine and serotonin, which is a nervous system mood stabilizer. I think you and I are both on serotonin mood stabilizers. Yay, so these play a role. So being attracted to someone can cause the production of serotonin, that's that mood stabilizer, to actually decrease. Yeah. So we get that dopamine increase, that serotonin decrease, and then that has another reaction on something called norepinephrine, which is actually created as a byproduct of dopamine, makes you highly excitable, makes you increase your ability to store memories.
Oh, interesting.
Can you remember the feeling of having those crushes? Sure. Or having that first, oh my God, they looked at me. I can feel it right now when I think even about my first boyfriend. Singing to me out on 16th Avenue between our friend's house before he asked me.
Oh my God, my boyfriend, who was best friends with your boyfriend, did that stupid shit to me too.
He sang to you?
Well, no. I'm trying to remember.
Did he sing Man of La Mancha to you?
No. No, we're not
musical theater.
We're not going to dissect that. There's a lot to say there. No, I just remember following him in my car over Claremont, and then he stopped his car in the middle of the street and pumped like jazz or something.
Oh, that's way cool.
Like made me dance with them. I know, it's not bad, right? It's kind of cute.
I got little bird in the cinnamon tree.
Oh my
God damn it.
Oh, we love you, Mike. We love you.
I love you too, Mike. You're my bro.
Yes.
So anyway, again, this is why we have these heightened memories. You can thank norepinephrine for that. It also regulates physical functions, blood pressure, heart rate. But again, that kind of nervy feeling you get is all that cortisol coursing through your veins. So again, we've got the lust, we've got your
my loins is on fire.
My loins on fire. My brain's fucking making me high.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot.
My stomach's sick. And okay, so that's usually where most of those crushes kind of stalls there. But let's say your crush actually engages with you, or let's say it actually moves on to more romance.
I like it.
That's where we get attachment. And I'm going to do 2 posts about 2 books that I love by Stan Tatkin. One is called Wired for Love, and then there's a second book, not written by him, I forgot who wrote it, but called Attach. If you want to go deeper into attachment, I highly recommend every single person do this.
Yeah.
Again, for the purposes of this, it's secure, anxious, disorganized, and avoidant attachments.
Yeah.
So this is something, the reason I bring attachment in, when you're actually with a partner, you have your attachment bond.
Yeah.
But when you're crushing on someone, usually they're not crushing back on you, or it would turn into a relationship, right? So what tends to happen is you feel insecure, you feel disorganized, you feel jealousy even. Like I remember Stevie B had a girlfriend in 8th grade named Maya, and I hated her.
Of course you did.
I was like, oh, why does he get her? But then I tried to do things like her.
I see.
Because that's how you win someone over.
That's a normal kid response, though. Nothing weird about
and that was that attachment.
Yeah.
The more I sensed he was distancing, I anxiously tried to go more towards.
And we do that in adulthood,
and
too.
Exactly. And the reason we do that is there's too much dopamine going on in our body. We're not thinking straight.
Yeah.
And too much oxytocin's being released, and it's not being reciprocated back. So I felt that, I love him, and I want to hug him, make out with him, and form an attachment, and the oxytocin helps us do that, but it alters our behavior with the dopamine. And so when you have too much dopamine and too much oxytocin released, you're going to act impulsively on your desires, what's right and wrong, and your pleasures. And this is when we do the things that... this is where we're going to get into obsessive territory, because that's normal and that's not bad, but you got to monitor that.
Okay, so we're going to get into obsession soon enough. And thank you for, through this, reminding me that I need to take my Lexapro for my anxiety today. So I haven't done that yet. Anyway.
Sorry, I hope it was okay that I outed you that way.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I am a huge proponent of psych meds. I have an anxiety disorder associated with trauma and abuse that I endured as a child, and it's a very low dose, but it does help me kind of regulate my anxiety and emotions. So, all good, baby.
Cool.
Lexapro for life. My good friend Nick, who does my tattoos, he posted a picture of a tattoo that he did for somebody recently, and it said, live, laugh, Lexapro. I was like, this person is my fucking hero.
Oh, I gotta
just embracing it. I at least wanted, I don't think I'd tattoo myself with that, but I need a t-shirt.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Embrace it. So, we alluded to this, or have been talking about this extensively, more than just alluding. Crushes start really early. And as parents, we often are inclined to dismiss and not take that shit seriously. I mean, I remember when I was 15, you know what's so funny is when I was 15 and my high school boyfriend and I broke up, my great aunt called me singing, "You're only 15," which isn't helpful. But I'm buddies with my that boyfriend, and he just texted me because
it's a sign.
I know it's not a sign. I really like him and his fiance a lot. He works at this club that we go to watch shows. Wonderful, but I just think it's so funny that this is in here, and he just texted me,
cool.
It's nice. I mean, never in my life, because we just reconnected about a year and a half ago, and never in my life did I think the boyfriend I had when I was 15 would later become a buddy.
I think that is very cool. You've always maintained very respectful and sweet relationship with guys who who are nice to you.
Yes. And I think I've been very fortunate that the majority of the folks I've dated have been incredible guys. Like this guy.
Yeah.
Really great guy.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy for him that he's going to get married soon and that, he's living a good life.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad he's in my life. Anyway, I'm digressing big time.
That's okay.
So, back to being a kid. Let's get back in that mindset. We parents should be taking crushes seriously.
Yeah.
And I found a great CNN article that points all of the things out that we should be doing as parents when our kid says, hey, mom and dad, I've got a crush. Because they're important, long ignored milestones in the relational life of pre-adolescent children that parents and caregivers should be respectfully discussing and unpacking with them. So it's puppy love infatuation that helps kids explore romantic feelings before they're ready for romantic relationships. Through them, they learn to cope with some of the more challenging parts of desiring someone else. So Julie Boker, she's an associate professor of psychology at the University of Buffalo in New York, says these kids have emerging romantic ideas and emerging romantic feelings, but aren't ready to translate them into romantic relationships or behaviors. But that doesn't mean they're not lacking in power. The feelings are real, and the kids can use their parents' help in understanding them and learning what to do with them.
Yeah.
So the article goes on to tell us, parents, how do you talk to your kids about crushes? When talking about crushes with kids, ask them why they like whom they like. What kind of things might they like to do with their crushes, and whether they might consider inviting them over. Also, what about that person, what happens if the person doesn't feel the same way? I think it's really important to have that conversation. Talking to kids about crushes really helps to normalize it, and it reduces any sort of shame or insecurity that the kid may feel. So, also on the flip side, don't say weird shit about you're going to get married. And, that's strange and inappropriate.
Yeah.
Don't project adult feelings and behavior on a small child.
I think that's so weird when people do that
strange.
with babies.
Yeah.
They're like, his future wifey. I'm like, they're still in diapers.
Well, also you're projecting a presumed sexuality and sexual preference on a child who might end up surprising you. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But I try not to say heteronormative things to my kid, suggesting when you grow up and have a girlfriend, I'm like, when you grow up and you have a partner, because I don't want to assume.
Yeah.
So, take these feelings seriously. When parents take their kids' feelings seriously, they're teaching their children to take their feelings seriously, which is the first step to learning how to process your feelings. Totally healthy.
And to be able to co-regulate with someone and know that, hey, I can talk about my feelings and you're not going to have an intensely high reaction or a lower reaction. You're going to stay with me and be a steady parent.
And you're going to ask questions, and you're curious about my life and how I feel, and you genuinely care. These are all good messages and signals.
You're not going to lecture me or tell me about what happened to you.
Right.
I can have a quick conversation about my feelings and it doesn't turn into a therapy session.
You're not going to tell me if I dance too closely with this person at a dance, I might get them pregnant.
Who told you that?
I think that's like a Catholic school thing, right? I don't know, or leave enough room for the Lord or something.
My mom told me if I was ever with a boy, I had she'd pretend I have a quarter between my knees.
That's hilarious. Anyway.
We can do stuff and I can still keep that quarter between my knees, Mom.
You're like, you just taught me how to be more talented, more adventurous.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, don't listen to this. Oh, that's really cute that she listens.
She does.
Hi, Mom. So crushes and parent-child conversations about crushes can be the building blocks of healthy romantic relationships going forward. Children have the chance to work through boundaries and rejection, empathy, all that good stuff. So, parents, be patient with your kids. Be curious, be interested, don't be dismissive. Anything that CNN missed?
Well, I think you covered it really well. And I again, we know that because of social media, because of the way children are allowed and encouraged in Hollywood to present themselves, they come across looking younger than they should. At least when we grew up in E.T., Brooke, what's her face? Drew Barrymore looked like a little girl.
Yes.
She didn't look all weird till Poison Ivy.
Oh, yeah.
A movie I loved, by the way, which explains a lot about me.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with you, Jen, 100%. Don't confuse early crushes, especially with younger kids. as anything. Don't sexualize it.
Yes.
Don't make it, like you said, I appreciate that the CNN article also says, hey, this is a developmental milestone that everyone shares, but at different times. And that's why it's so fucking awkward to be, I'm going to say between 6 and 13 even. Because I got hormonal very early.
Totally.
Other people came later. So even boys that I did like my age, they weren't there yet. And no one ever really explained that side of it. I think our school did a pretty decent job explaining the anatomy part of sex, that's not even sexuality, of just anatomy of reproduction. But they didn't really talk about anything else. And my heart goes out for parents too, because I think most of us haven't come to terms with how we behave. Like I said, doing this research on this and looking back in some of my diaries gave me a lot of empathy for my younger self. And I didn't really realize until you and I talked and you're like, no, I did the same thing. That's totally normal. That wasn't obsessive, Carolyn. That was fine. It gave me this different sense of who I am. And then even how that carried on later on. And I think that, often our parents are our first loves. That's who we form our primary attachment to. And it's supposed to be a very positive thing. Unfortunately, it sometimes isn't.
Right.
And, so I think many parents feel really blindsided. But when a crush starts to happen, because one, they think, oh God, now we're having to talk about sex. No, not really. And it can even be this experience of, oh my God, my kid is liking someone and having other feelings about someone who isn't me. And I don't know, do you have a feeling about that as a parent, or can you empathize with parents in that?
No. Okay. I can't. I'm not trying
that kind of
parent. Cast aspersions or say there's something wrong with that. But I am totally comfortable with my child navigating, becoming a person, becoming a full-fledged human being, experiencing the total and complete range of emotions in regard to other people. I think that's wonderful and adorable.
Well, and like you said, crushes can teach kids about attraction, privacy. And instead of getting defensive or dismissing it as just a crush, or, again, act interested, act supportive. Don't avoid the topic. Also, don't interrogate them or laugh or mock. And also, don't get on their emotional train. You are the steady base. Even if you're not steady inside, save that for therapy. Save that for your partner. Save that for your friends. Be like, oh my God, this is happening. Don't do that to your kid.
No.
Again, I always think asking a child too, like, hey, is this mutual? And take that as an opportunity to discuss respect and boundaries. And maybe even, well, what do you do then when you are feeling sad? Are you going to sit and scroll, or are you going to eat a bunch of pastry? You're
gonna galvanize the other friends of yours in the playground to chant mean things about this motherfucker.
That's what I did. Or are you going to hate on their girlfriend? So these are all things. I don't know that. No, I honestly don't have much of a memory if that did happen, so I can't chastise people around me. But I don't remember anyone having that conversation with me. And what I did have was a book called Marcy's Secret Book of Dating.
Nice.
That I got at the Scholastic Book Festival. And I've gone back and looked at it. I don't know if that was the most helpful book for me.
Oh, do you have it? We need to read excerpts.
I am gonna purchase. It's like really expensive though, because I don't think it's in print anymore.
It's vintage, bro.
It is vintage, and it was I remember that book because it said like what she did, and it was all about like, well, do your hair and wear lip gloss and be that way.
Might as well have been written in the 50s.
So exactly. So I think it's okay also to explain to your kids, hey, it's okay for someone not to like you. That doesn't mean anything.
I agree. All right, good stuff. All good stuff. So we promised we were going to get to the unhealthy aspects of a crush, because so far what we've discussed primarily is the healthy side of it. Let's talk about the dark side.
Yeah, my favorite.
Yes, mine too.
Because I've done all these things.
Thanks to Psych to Go for giving us the 5 signs that your crush is unhealthy. So number 1, your crush is unavailable. So this doesn't necessarily mean only in a relationship. This can mean your crush is emotionally unavailable. Whatever the case may be, they are not ready to take that plunge with you. So if your crush is going through a hard time or just broke up with someone, they probably need space and time before starting something with you or anyone new.
It's never really worked out when I've tried to do the swoop in.
Yes. Yeah, I'm being somebody's rebound. Not usually a good thing, although sometimes it works. Whatever. So, 2, your sense of self-worth depends on them. It's cool to feel elated and excited when your crush pays you a compliment, but if your like sense of validation and love for yourself is predicated exclusively on this person acknowledging you, might not be a good thing. K3, you neglect other aspects of your life for them. I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, waiting around. I remember when I was dating this guy, very loosely dating this guy in my early 20s, and you know, I think it was purely a sexual thing. In my mind, I wanted it to be more, you know, and I liked him, and I would have plans with friends on a Friday night. Dude would text me at like 3 p.m. and be like, "What are you doing tonight?" My friends would be
actually
like,
early.
Is it? I guess it is. They'd be like, "Don't do it. We already have plans. Don't do it. Don't be at his beck and call." And of course, I'd go running because I was like 22 years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, my sense of self-worth at that time kind of was dependent upon other people, or I was neglecting other aspects of my life, rather, my friends.
Yeah.
So, you know, try not to do that. If you're constantly giving up things you used to prioritize, such as hanging out with your friends, hobbies, your responsibilities, you may be too obsessed.
I think of this one too as talking about them too much. Like I have had feedback from friends who unfortunately I'm no longer friends with, where I really sucked up a lot of the oxygen in that relationship because it was all about and I'm sure I've done this with you too. Like it was all about that relationship.
I've done that as well. Yeah. You know? And I think that's part of being in your early 20s where you're still very much in an egotistical phase where your brain has not quite yet developed to understand that nobody wants to be talked to death about your fucking feelings for Steve Buscemi. Anyway, number 4, you think they're flawless. This person can do no wrong. Hey, nobody's flawless and that's okay.
Yes.
As my mother-in-law is fond of saying, nobody is perfect except for Jesus. I can't relate to that.
How did she not become a nun?
I don't know.
She would have been a great nun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I what is it too? It's like, you know, it's funny how when you break up with them, all you see is the flaws.
Yes.
But, or, you know, again, it's I love when someone gets that angry point where it's like, well, he was kind of this way or stuff. It's like, yes, you're mad now.
Well, you block out all the bad, you know, the bad stuff or the not so bad stuff that's just imperfect stuff, whatever. But oftentimes there are red flags.
I like when you're an asshole, I'm an asshole. We're all assholes.
We're all assholes, man.
No one's perfect.
No one is
to me, that's
perfect.
a red flag.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're also on our best behavior early on.
At least for the first, few months. Yeah. And then I'm going to cut some farts in front of you. So Carolyn likes to do that on the first date.
I really did.
Anyway, we're not going to get into that. And 5, your social media stalking is out of hand. You know, that's the thing. Everybody's accessible now to an extent, especially if you're friends with them on social media. You get insight into their lives, and it's hard not to obsess. So don't be aware of that, right? Looking at their pictures from time to time, not a big deal. But if you're looking at all their updates and stalking their every move via whatever people are using these days, because apparently Facebook isn't cool anymore.
I feel bad for this generation, Jen. I think we have to have a lot more empathy for them because you and I didn't have to do that.
Right.
It was about, I'm going to plan. I get on the phone and say to my friend, I have a half day tomorrow. I'm going to come meet you at your high school. Yeah. And I'm just going to wear my cute outfit and try and be noticed by the guy.
Or sit next to my landline and hope that they call. You kids don't know how good you have it these days.
Well, I did magic. I would write their name with a candle and just and pray that or not pray, but conjure them and ask the call. Yeah. But I think it's really hard because, again, even with online dating, I would Google people. Yeah. You would start creating this whole thing about them and you would get really obsessed and I haven't even met them yet. And it's weird. And I think that's something to be cautious of in this generation that you're very accessible to them. Yeah. They're really accessible to you. And you're seeing a very it's contrived. It's a contrived very manicured version of who they are. Yes. And you have, my heart goes out to it because that's all it is. Yeah. And it's not even, I'm in their top 5 on Snap. Yeah. And that's why they broke up with their girlfriend. Man,
there's a top 5.
There's a top 5, bitch.
Is Snapchat still a thing?
Snapchat's fucking huge.
Is it still huge?
Oh, it's huge.
Jesus Christ.
I wish I would have had stock in it.
Anyway, we gotta wrap this up, guys, because we can talk about this ad nauseum, as we already have. So, give us your final thought, Carolyn. Close us out Jerry Springer style.
All right. Basically, if you find someone that you have a crush on, listen to Jen and Carolyn. It is normal. It is a normal part, it's a reasonable part of being human. And if you're always the one who's crushing on someone, maybe notice that it's okay. You know, I think it's okay to experience some of this stress, and it helps us adapt to new things, and it's always an opportunity for growth. But if you're thinking about them all the time, if you're obsessing on them like they're an object, check that.
Yeah.
You know, again, you can take some quizzes. There's a quiz for everything.
Where's my copy of Cosmo?
On, you know, on BuzzFeed, you can take something. Cosmo. Yeah. But, you know, again, just take this as a moment to step back and reflect. Maybe talk to a friend. Maybe go talk to a professional. Someone with an unbiased observation that can give you that opinion in a very kind way.
Yes.
And help you maybe not see things differently, but see things broader. And, you know, again, we have to be able to normalize these experiences and look at these opportunities and talk about how they're impacting our basic well-being.
Okay.
Nothing is good for you all the damn time.
Yes.
Look for the bigger picture, explore ways to have restorative experiences, social connections, healthy distractions, that I call them. And also, please laugh at your creepy, weird, you know, obsessive self who doodled a million times, you know, Mr. and
younger
Mrs.
self.
All these things.
Totally
and
normal.
Also, again, be honest at your current patterns. How are some of your early experiences impacting how you relate to people, not just your partner?
That makes
not
sense.
just people you have crush on.
Yeah.
And this shit's really hard.
It is hard.
It
is hard. Well, with everything going on in your brain and body, you know, simultaneously, it is hard to navigate. All right, everybody, I'm about to pee my pants. I'm shifting uncomfortably and nonstop in my leather chair. So we bid you farewell, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Squish you.
We squish you, bro. I'm going to piss myself.